Your conversations are now being recorded.
Oh, goody.
Oh, okay. Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let's have attention, please. All quiet, please. Thank you. Thank you for your patience as I was going around to line up students to take said test. Still waiting for a couple of students to do that. In case you haven't noticed, after Jackson, hello?
I'm going to land and let me get
Oh, okay, yes. Landon, stop interrupting our class. We're trying to... Okay, no more temperature checks? Yeah, did you not notice that during first period? Oh, is that your former jail time? Oh, okay.
former jail.
Former jail time. You're on parole now. That's good. Yay.
Looking for jobs now.
So what?
To hire.
Yeah, let me explain. Shh. Let me explain. Shh. The board met yesterday. One of the things is, and this was actually a pleasant surprise because I think I've only had like maybe one person. It was a ninth grader. They came in from lunch having sat in the sun with a hot black cap on, and they registered over 100 degrees. But otherwise, I've actually had, I want to say, 2 people that I'm confirmed that actually that were COVID positive. And when I took the temperature, I didn't know that they were COVID positive at the time. We found out afterwards that their temperatures were within the range. So it's not the greatest tool necessarily to identify whether somebody actually is COVID or has COVID positive or whatever. But that's out the door. After spring break, you guys know when spring break is, right? You're seniors. You should know when your breaks are. Hello. Not the end of this week, but the end of the next week. Shh. Shh. It's always helpful when I can communicate without having interruptions. So we have a week off after that. When you come back, the Mondays are still going to be whatever the Mondays are, right? And part of that is because teachers throughout the school are still working with at-home students. That number has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. I think I've only got one 11th grader who's in the at-home thing. And as I gather, next year, it ain't going to be that way at all, right? I came up in the staff meeting yesterday and I'm like, oh, so if there's like 1 or 2 or whatever number of students that want to do online instruction next year, sign up at an all-online school. We have a hard enough time doing what we're doing with everybody here without that. But if you are still online for this year, yeah, that's what it is for this year, okay? But it's so good to see all you guys here, bits and drabs and so forth, and hopefully things will continue safe. In here, here's the deal. You will go on Tuesday to 90-minute periods a day. 4 90-minute periods a day. A days are Tuesdays and Thursdays. Wednesdays and Fridays are B days. I will see you guys, and I don't know, you'll have to check with your other teachers, but since I've only got one section of seniors, I will see you first thing in the morning on a B day. Oh, whatever. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, you guys need to be considerate. I'm just telling you what the facts are. You don't need to, like, be rude or anything, okay? Shh. Do you want, raise your hand if you got a clarifying question. Yes?
So we still get like don't have to come super early every other day? Like our
I guess. I don't know. Wait for Mrs. Anderson to give you the thing. It sounds like whatever your first period is on A day, it may be that. And so that's like coming in around like 9:30 or so. You know. Anyway. Okay, Daniel. Shh. I'm sorry? I don't know. Maybe. I'm guessing. Maybe. Confirm that with Mrs. Anderson. The only thing I know for a fact is that 12th grade history is scheduled first period out of 4 periods on B days. Got that? So I will see you for 90-minute periods. There's no blue or green. So some of you guys who are like, well, I'm still a blue or I'm still a green, and then you watch my videos on the other times and so forth. Landon is like streaming in and so forth, so he's getting it live. That goes out the door, all right?
You have to be there every day, Landon,
Ashton, your question.
whether you like it or not.
Shh. Yeah. Whatever you want to call them. Okay? Does that make sense? Questions, comments? Okay. I've sent out to some of you guys, I appreciate, because I sent it out yesterday. If you hadn't already forwarded your IA without your name and without your candidate number, hello, to Mrs. Holliday, you need to do that. And I'll be following up on that list because I want to make sure, because I know you guys, and we talked about this quite a bit yesterday at the staff meeting among the 12th grade IB teachers. You've got a lot on your plate over the time. I was just sitting there quietly, happily glad that, for my part, you guys' work was done. So it's just basically a matter of like getting it from you, and most of you guys have, and sending it on to Miss Holliday so that she's got all those that she can do. Okay? I think so. Anyway, if you got an email from me, raise your hand. No, never mind. If you got an email from me yesterday, and some of you guys followed up with it right away, get that to Miss Holliday. We'll just make sure all those component parts are in. Okay? Other questions, comments? All right, let's get to Rwanda. Okay? Yeah, buckle up. This is powerful stuff here. Follow along with this, with the handout. You guys got that? Basically, this is a nice organizational thing. We go causes of conflict. We're talking about that. So we've got, basically, we're going to be looking into that. The first bullet point is what we're doing now. And then we get the course and intervention and then the impact. This is a lot of stuff going on in here. The key terms are going to be, as we go through the key terms, that will kind of take you through that as well. So we talked yesterday about the Twa, the Hutu, the Tutsi, how they're all part of like the same cultural group known as Kinyarwanda, okay? And which of them, Rodrigo, had greater success after having migrated into the region that is today referred to as Rwanda? Which would you say had the greatest economic success? Now, the Hutu is going to be about 90% of the population. And you're not entirely wrong. What would you say, Garrett? Tootsie. Yeah, and here's the thing. A lot of the advantages that the Tutsi will have are going to come, as we'll see today, after the arrival of the Europeans and they start setting up their empires in Africa. That's going to really nail it as far as advantages to the Tutsi. But even before the arrival of the Europeans, write this down, even before the arrival of the Europeans, there is a perception that the Tutsi benefited, maybe they had a little bit more success in ranching and so forth than the Hutu did. They're the later arrivals. They're going to be smaller in number ultimately. And here's the deal. Here's the deal. Make sure you have this in there. There's a lot of intermarriage and mixing of populations and so forth. And you're going to be hard-pressed if you just sort of walk into a Rwandan population and go, oh, I can tell who the Tutsis are and the Hutus. It's going to be real hard for you to be able to do that. And yet, when we get to this conflict and the genocide that's going to take place in the 1990s, it's going to be really easy for somebody to quickly identify whether you're a Tutsi or a Hutu. Let me see your identification papers. Because on the identification papers will be a designation. And you're not 50-50. You're Hutu or you're Tutsi. You can't be 50-50. You have to make a choice. Yes. Yeah. I mean, actually, let's pause on that for a moment. Because in the United States, we take demographic data, right? And sometimes it's really controversial because it's like, which group are you? Barack Obama. I can see him still because it looks. Did you do that on purpose? You're so bad. He's making a political statement with his like. I mean, usually you could be counted on to cover up somebody, but that wasn't even subtle. My gosh, Ashton. Wow. So, let me ask you, Ashton, see if you know this. Which category would you put Barack Obama? European, African, what? He would identify, I think, as African American. If you talk to him, he would identify as African American. If you did a genealogical breakdown, Joe's looking at you. He's like, I won, Ashton. I won. Anyway. So, he's 50-50. His father, 100% Kenyan, African. His mother's side of the family, 100% like European heritage, as I believe. So it's like, which is it? Oh my gosh, we spend lots and lots of time in our country figuring this. It's like, oh my gosh, what do you put down? How many of you guys would identify as white? And you're like, Caucasian. I'm not from the Caucasus. I have no heritage from the Caucasus mountain region. I'm not Azerbaijani, Georgian, or Armenian. I'm like, what the heck? How many of you guys would identify as like Asian American? Indigenous? Hispanic? And then it's like, go through it. It's like, among which Asian American and which Latino. It's, oh my gosh, it just goes on and on and on. It's a big deal, and sometimes it's frustrating. At least in the American system, you can like put like other, kind of messes with them. But in Rwanda, you can make a little note of this, during critical times of their history, I don't think they have this now. In fact, I'm pretty sure they got rid of it now. But during the time of the genocide, you had to have on your documentation. And so when people were rounding up the Tutsi to kill them, they would have them show their papers because they couldn't always tell by looking at them. Okay? They couldn't always tell. I remember it was weird. It's kind of like, what do you call a person with dark skin in Britain? Are they an African American? Yeah, I remember this interview. This guy was like, I'm a Briton. He said with a vaguely Jamaican English type accent and so forth. I'm like, yeah, what are you in this country? I'm American. I mean, it's like, but those identifiers are going to be critical in Africa. There is some distinction. It's not all entirely placed upon them by Europeans. Make sure you write this down. There was a sense, even before the Europeans, that the Tutsi were late arrivals and they were resented to a degree. Okay? Got that? Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like the field that they're going into, ranching and so forth, as opposed to farming. And they're going to be a little bit more successful, but not entirely. It's not this vast, vast difference. I mean, if you were going to, go to Europe in the Middle Ages and look at a Jewish family versus, an indigenous German family, which are going to be more economically advantageous? Well, actually, the Jews did pretty well in Europe at the time, in part because of some of the fields they went into. Banking, which was not allowed for under the Christian determination that banking, charging interest, is okay, when you take out a loan and so forth. So, you'll have some economic differences there too. Oh my gosh, if you want to have one group of people hating on another group of people, start identifying differences and then start building on them and get some resentment. That's one of the things we're going to be seeing throughout this unit, and it's frustrating. And the thing that is actually very, very frustrating is that a lot of the distinctions between the Hutus and the Tutsis are going to be placed upon them by, you ready? Write this down. Europeans. Here we go. You called it. Europeans. Woohoo! And we've seen this. So we talked about this before. Because if the Europeans come into a particular area and they're like, okay, we want to dominate this area. Wow, there's not enough of us. We need some help. Identify a particular tribe within the area, give them an advanced position relative to the other ones, and they can be your people. Got that? Who are the Europeans going to be using in this context between Tutsis and Hutus? It's going to be the Tutsis. Okay? Yeah, it's going to be the smaller number. And Yeah, it's interesting that way. And some of it is like, well, they're a little bit taller, maybe a little bit lighter skinned. Maybe. Don't count on it, though. I mean, we've got that image right here. So there's a little bit to be said for that. And in fact, because the Tutsi came from this Horn of Africa region, if you look at the population, they're a little bit lighter skinned. And you can see some of that maybe because of mixed heritage tying back to the connections that they have, say, with Arab populations. A little bit of that. I mean, literally in Africa, if you sort of do a gradient, if you go start in the north, lighter skin, you head more to the equator, you're going to have darker skin. By the time you get to South Africa, you got some really light-skinned people. Where the heck did they come from? Britain and the Netherlands, for the most part, yeah. I mean, that's going to be... And France, exactly. Yes, that's true. France, exactly. So who are going to be the ones who are going to come in this area? We're going to start with the Germans. Germans are going to establish control over what will become known as Rwanda. Okay? And then the Belgians. So we're going to talk about the Germans first, and then mostly we'll talk about the Belgians. Okay? They are going to attribute the Tutsis as somewhat superior, right? Due to perhaps some of these racist notions that lighter skin is superior, taller is superior, slimmer is superior, narrow noses are superior. Was what? I don't know. It's not fair. Exactly. It's stupid. Hello. Write that down. Tall people are not necessarily better than short people. Right, Quinn? Okay. Yeah. If you're flying on an airplane, you're like, it's nice to be short because you're like, better leg room and so forth. Oh yeah. Yeah, I was visiting a home, a friend of my sister's. He's very tall. He played basketball and so forth. He had oh my gosh, the door things are like way high. I mean, it's like he never, ever, ever has to duck. It's stupid. Yes, it's stupid. Okay? It's stupid. Yes, I mean, there's all kinds of different issues and so forth. Yeah. So, because the Germans and then later the Belgians will use the Tutsis to help them govern, the Hutus, write this down, are going to really, really resent that, are going to get a sense of inferiority, and this will carry over a period of time. Yeah. First the Germans, then the Belgians. All right, I'll tell you exactly how that works. Okay? As far as the colonial rule. Europe, in the latter part of the 1800s, had we've referred to this before, the scramble for Africa, where the British and the French and the Germans and the Belgians and the Portuguese and the Italians and have ever left anybody out, are just like clamoring to take over the rich resources of Africa. Why hadn't they done that before? They didn't have the proper inoculations. Really? Don't you love it when modern science comes up with inoculations so you can withstand tropical diseases? Because what's that going to do for the Africans themselves when the Europeans get all shotted up? They'll come in and take over with their superior technology and weaponry and so forth. Previously, the jungles, in a sense, the tropics, had that disease to help keep out a lot of the European incursion. But by the time you get to the end of the 1800s, do you follow that? Does that make sense? Because if you're in tropical Africa, you have some natural disease resistance built over time. Not perfect. Africans can still get malaria and so forth. But if you're coming in from Europe, you got none of that. Do you have to get a malaria shot to go to South Africa? Malaria is not that much because it's too far in the south because it's more like a climate that's like Europe and North America. Exactly, yeah. But once you get into like the tropical area, oh my gosh, malaria is a big, big problem. But so, if you're going to go to the tropics, what are you going to get, Tara? You're going to get shot. You're going to go to Central District Health, and you'll go through and get all your whatever shots they have, It'll be great. Yeah. So, which countries were scrambling with each other, stepping over each other in order to get pieces of Africa? Germany was. Remember, Germany, kind of a latecomer to the thing. Right? Bismarck's like, hey, we got an empire. Let's not upset the British by trying to take over chunks of Africa. But then Wilhelm II was like, no, I want Africa. I want some stuff in the Pacific. I want a big navy. Yeah, well, you got all that, and you got World War I, too. And you're going to lose your entire thing. The British, the French, the Belgians. Are you kidding me? The Belgians got all of this Belgian Congo region. I mean, Belgium's like a latecomer European country. Oh, they're cute. They got the waffles and everything. It's going to be one of the most horrible of all of the European imperial possessions. The king, Leopold, will have personal possession of the Belgian Congo. And the local population there will be pretty much enslaved for his purposes, to take mineral resources out of the ground so that he can be... I'm sorry, what? We did. We did. So it's kind of like some of the things you've learned before are helping you to gain an understanding of the situation here. Okay? So we got the racist attitudes. Why didn't the Africans resist? I mean, malaria helped them to resist, but were they industrialized? No, write that down. They're not industrialized. They don't have the modern military weaponry. They never really did over much of their history, you know? But this is a really bad time to not have modern weaponry, because the Europeans want all of those great mineral resources, and they come in and they take it. They take it, they take it. Here you go, write this down. 1884 to 1885, the Berlin Conference held in Berlin. Yeah, crazy. And they basically, that's one of the times where the Europeans come together and they're like, oh, we get this and we get that. And so the Germans will have East Africa and little Rwanda and little Burundi. That's all going to be part of the German control. You got that? So who is going to be the overlord of all of that area? Kaiser Wilhelm II. He was the guy that took Germany into the beginning of World War I. Got that? Yeah, they got this part down here. What is Southwest Africa, now known as the country of Namibia? I mean, if you want to know, Cameroon and then also Togoland. That's what the Germans got. But relevant to our purposes, they had Rwanda. After World War I, how much of that African territory will Germany be able to maintain control over? None of it. Very good. Write that down. Germany loses all of it. Okay? So while the Kaiser has that territory, already they are differentiating between Hutus and Tutsis to help govern that. Okay? Although, yeah, so I mean, after it's all done, you know, too bad, Germany, you lose it. The genocide that we're going to get to? The genocide is going to take place in 1993. 93, 94. Yep, I'm giving you the preview, which is going to help explain why there are so many Hutus that hate Tutsis, that they would want to take machetes and slaughter their neighbors. Because 60% of the people are going to be killed with cheap Chinese manufactured machetes, imported for the purpose of hate killing. You're like, where the heck did all that hate come from? It was there, in part, differences among people, and then exacerbated by the colonial rule, because the colonists need people to help them govern. And so who's going to help the Germans govern that region? Tutsis. And then we get the Belgians. After the war, write this down, after World War I is over, the German East Africa region goes to Britain. So they get the biggest part. Rwanda and Burundi go to the Belgians. So make sure you have this. Belgium will be in control of Rwanda and Burundi just to the south, and these issues all the way up until Rwanda gains its independence in the 1960s. Okay? All right, so what's that going to mean for this? The Belgians will continue the practice of having local ruling elite govern the area for the benefit of the European overlord. And specifically, let me see if we get, oh yeah, here we go. Is it going to be much better? Yeah, this is a lovely cartoon done at the time. Leopold strangling as a snake the poor Congo people being ruled in the Congolese area. And if you think things are bad in Rwanda as we get through this whole story, you're going to look and go, wow, Congo, yeah. Actually, we already covered the Congo Wars and some of the stuff going on there too. It's messed up. To help the Belgians rule Rwanda, they will have compliant so-called Tootsie Kings. Okay? Tootsie Kings. So, for example, on the left there, ruling on behalf of the Belgians will be King Yahoo V. Okay, the full name there is Yahoo V Musinga, 1896 to 1931. He will actually be overthrown by his son, really, with the help of the Belgians. They help the son overthrow the father because that's who the Belgians want. They want Matura, or Maturi, whatever, the third, to be in charge because he's more compliant. That's the key word. The Belgians help the son overthrow the father because he is more compliant with Belgian rule. Later, we'll see another one come in 1959 to the present, anyway, till the Rwanda officially gains independence in 1962. Is it 62? Yeah, officially independent. Okay. One of the key things, just to kind of, as we go through this, what are the Belgians mostly interested in doing? Well, while they do lots of mining and so forth when they do lots of mining and so forth in the Congo, is there a lot of mining going on in Rwanda? Not so much. It's actually got something in common with Idaho. The soil is rich. Everybody know this? Why is Idaho soil so rich? What gives it that? Exactly. The volcanic component in the soil. It's really, really good for growing things. That's why if you can get the water out into the fields, you can grow all kinds of potatoes and all kinds of great things and so forth. They have also, Rwanda has a lot of great volcanic soil. They don't grow potatoes so much as they grow coffee and tea. Write that down. Coffee and tea. Those are going to be the main cash crops administered by the Belgians, the work done by the local population, mostly Hutu, and you've got some Tutsis and so forth doing that as well. A cash crop economy is a little bit of a dangerous thing. You guys were able to do the Econ Summit and so forth. Right? What's a danger if you've got a cash crop economy that relies primarily on coffee, the sale of coffee and tea around the world? Well, if you have a drought, that's bad for you. But what if all the coffee growing countries are having great weather and they produce lots and lots of coffee? It's good quality. The price could go down, exactly. When you have too much supply, the price goes down, and then does that impact the economy of Rwanda? Yes, it's too reliant on the price. And if you think of this, it's like, how much do you buy? How much does it cost now for a cup of Joe at Starbucks? $5. Guess how much of that money actually ends up in the pocket of the actual guy out there working in the coffee fields? Not that much. Not that much. And even less if the price goes down. Anyway, keep an eye on that, because that is going to be a complicating factor when we get to describing events leading up to the genocide. Boy, you hate to be in a country that goes through a bad economy, because when a bad economy hits, man, people get tense. Yeah. I mean, imagine when you guys finish your education, you're like, okay, I'm ready full-time work. I'm going to take full advantage of my full education that I've been working so hard on, and we're going through an economic recession. You're like, I thought stress in high school was hard. Yeah, anyway, not to like freak you out or anything like that. Oh, there we go. That's life. I mean, but those are, you get the ups and downs and things and so forth. Well, it's interesting because who makes the decisions as to what the Rwandan economy is going to be? The outsiders, the Belgians, right? Okay? Oh, and forced labor, just like they have in the Congo. Forced labor, forced labor, forced labor, forced labor. And oh my gosh, here we go. This is what I was talking about. Write it down. beginning in 1933. 1933, the Rwandans, under the control of the Belgians, you're going to have your identity card. You got your picture, your date of birth, your residence, and your ethnic designation. Okay? 1933. So who put in the identity card system? The Belgians. They're like, oh, it's just for documentation. Right? So when the government comes around, and says, what is your heritage? I dare you. No, don't do that. Don't say, are you getting this so that we can all be rounded up and killed in an ethnic cleansing?
I'm short all the way.
That's right. The short people rule. Yes, Jackson.
What were some of the things you said they included on their identification card?
Well, you're going to have I can't read the language and so forth, but you got the name, you got the age, the identification, where you're living. The critical thing you need to have is that they have the ethnic designation. So most of the people in that area are going to be identified as which? Tutsi or Hutu? Hutu, exactly, because I told you already that makes up about 90% of the population. And then what's the second most going to be? Tutsi, at just below 10%. And then Twa is just like a tiny, tiny bit. Okay? Yeah, very, 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 very small. You know what? We're not going to talk too much about the Twa from here on out because it's such a small, identifiable group. I mean, they're just sort of the first ones to arrive. It's kind of like when you talk about the United States of America. How much do we talk about the contributions of indigenous people in our current situation? And yet, prior to the arrival of Europeans, they were the group in the continent. Why not talk about that group as much now when you talk about American history and what's going on in the country? Because they're a very small component of it. Should we talk about it? Sure. Should we talk about the history? Sure. Anyway, from here on out, we're going to be talking mostly about the Hutus and the Tutsis. Okay? All right. So, identity card system, a lot of resentment, okay, of this identity card system. World War II. Woo! Who wins World War II? America. Soviet Union. Britain. Does it impact like what's going on in Africa afterwards? Yeah. After World War II, we saw this before. The United States put some pressure on the British and the French and the Belgians. Like, hey, maybe you could get rid of your colonies, decolonize. Let's end this imperial thing because we already saw this, right? Like in Vietnam, did the Vietnamese want the French to continue ruling for a long, long time? Not so much. Did that work? Did we play that? Did that work out very well for us ultimately? I don't think so. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of pressure put on by Western powers, especially the United States and the United Nations, to decolonize. And so Belgium, little old Belgium, is being pressured to decolonize, okay, to grant independence. And this is going to ultimately come in 1962. So what is taking place in the years leading up to independence? Well, hopefully there's good preparation. Sometimes the preparation is not so good. Not so good preparation. So sometimes when the Europeans leave, they leave a mess. Remember all the fighting in the Congo after Belgium left? Yeah. I mean, it started up right away. Write this down. Belgium did not do a great job preparing its colonial possessions for self-rule. Congo, Rwanda, Burundi. Okay? Yeah. If you want to use nice as a word to describe genocide committed by one group of people over another and so forth. Yeah, it's kind of like a lot of the bad behavior and so forth is outside, but eventually when the Belgians are gone, they're like, I'm not responsible for that. And yet, we got a lot of stories still to tell. We got a lot of details coming up here. Okay? Yeah, let's go. Hold off on that one for a moment. All right. So, continuing on, we have, by 1957, yeah.
Quick question.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're about, it's for those of you guys following, as you should be, on the key terms, I'm about to give you notes on Parmesu. Okay, you ready? Parmesu. Okay? By 1957, you get the beginning of two major political parties in Rwanda, anticipating the arrival of democracy, which will come after about 5 years from 1957. Okay? And the two political parties, don't be surprised, they're predominantly associated with the ethnic groups, the tribal groups. So, guess what Parmehutu is made up predominantly of? Thank you very much. Hutus, exactly. That's going to be a predominant Hutu political party. Okay? And then there is going to be another group called the National Rwandan Union, UNAR. Oh, survey says that's going to be a political party predominantly associated with Tutsis. Very good. You got that lined up. Okay. Let's go back to the, here we go. In 1959, the Tootsie King, Matari III, dies, and ethnic fighting breaks out soon thereafter. All it takes is just one or two people to beat up somebody else, and then the next thing you know, it just spreads. It's terrible. Some, you see, in this particular situation, some Tutsis beat up a Hutu politician. There you go. Like, what's that going to spark? In 1959, shortly after the death of the king, he'll be replaced with another king. You're going to have some ethnic fighting after some Tutsis beat up a Hutu politician. For the next 3 years, 1959 to 1962, there will be a revolution of sorts in Rwanda before they become independent. Ethnic fighting, and the number of people who are dead is, I mean, it really varies here. It's kind of like, can't you get an more accurate thing? On the low end, 10,000. On the high end, 100,000. You're like, whoa! You had some ethnic fighting going on for 3 years during that time period, and you're going to end up with between 10,000 and 100,000 people dead? Yes, and then ultimately, as we can see, the Tutsi monarchy is going to be over.
Did you say it was the National Rwandan Union that was predominantly Tutsi?
Correct. Okay, correct. All right. Now, with the ending of the monarchy, the Belgians helped set up a provisional government that is going to transition into the period of independence. And here's what you need to know about that provisional government. And it's going to be pretty much the case kind of from here on out until we get to the crazy times in the 90s. The provisional government is going to consist predominantly of Hutus. Okay? Because when you get into a democracy and you got 90% of the population that are Hutu, which political party you probably think is going to end up dominating in the elections? The Hutu political parties are. It's kind of like in South Africa. When you finally let every adult in South Africa vote, are the white-dominated political parties going to continue dominating in democratic elections? No, you're not going to. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, but once the decision is made to let everyone, every adult vote in South Africa, don't be surprised if the leaders of South Africa are representative of majority demographic population, which is Black African. Okay? Anyway, so if you're Tutsi, are you happy about the onset, the arrival of Hutu government? No. And in fact, some of them start fleeing. Write this down. This is going to be very important. And this is why the map on the back of your paper is really helpful. If I tell you that they flee, Julian, to the north, they cross the northern border from Rwanda to the country to the north, where are they headed? What? Burundi is to the south. It's the cool. It's the country with the really cool tricolor flag with the chicken in it. And do not say Wakanda. That is not an acceptable response. Uganda. Write it down. It's on the back of your paper. Jackson, how does that foot taste? Have you got a good taste of it? All right. Uganda. All right, so write this down. In the southern part of Uganda, just north of Rwanda's northern border there will be a significant Tutsi refugee population. This is important that you understand this because they have fled the country, they are in Uganda, and they are organizing themselves into what will be known as a large, significant rebel group. And it is the Rwandan Patriotic Front, the RPF. And the leader, ultimately, is going to be a man by the name of Paul Kagame. Okay? To take you to the end of the genocide story, when we finally get to the whole thing and get the genocide and the killing and so forth, this guy is going to be in charge of Rwanda. He is a Tutsi. He's part of the RPF located in Uganda that is going to ultimately invade Rwanda and capture control of the country. Oh, and by the way, put an end to the genocide.
So, is it the Tutsis or the Tutsis that have more population?
Hutus, by far.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Tutsis are
Okay. So yeah, the Tutsis are kind of like, oh, this isn't working out very well. Our monarchy's gone. The Belgians are going to be gone pretty soon. Our special position in helping to govern the country is going to be over here pretty soon. This isn't going to work out very well. July 1st, 1962, Independence Day. The aliens are beaten back. Just kidding. No, that's going to be, that's a different, thank you very much for picking up on the movie aspect of it. Yeah, we'll get to that. Okay, and we'll talk about this guy coming in charge of Rwanda. Yes, woo! That's just kind of like running the show.